Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Biloxi City Council on September 3rd. Please stand with us as we receive the invocation by Pastor Kelly Pensinger from Bethel Lutheran Church.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, our Creator and our strength, we thank you so much for the people here tonight and their willingness to do hard work for the city of Biloxi. We gathered together here today intent on doing good work, recognizing that you are among us. Help the City Council seek to represent fairly and well those who have given them this task. May their efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. Help them seek to serve with respect for all, and may their personal faith give them strength to act honestly and well in all matters before them tonight. Today, may they and all of us be open to others' ideas and beliefs, respectful of our differences and not threatened by them. May we see what is truly important and unites us, focusing on that to banish roadblocks, the sins of ego, fear, and hate. Be with us now and always. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Mr. Tisdale, will you lead us in pledge? We do have a change to the agenda. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Lawrence. Second by Mr. Barrett. All in favor? Unanimous votes. Miss Lucy, will you please read those changes?
To our policy agenda, we're substituting the capital projects attachment only for 4D.
Now do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Lawrence.
Second.
Second by Mr. Glavin. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous vote. Brings us to the presentation agenda. Mr. Mayor, is he available for report?
No mayor report other than to say that the mayor will not be with us this evening. He's on the way back into town.
Okay.
And I do have one thing I'd like to include in the mayor's report. As of the 27th of August, the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency has piled on and endorsed our appeal to FEMA for the $8.8 million in money that was deobligated recently, as well as the $6.6 million of additional funds that we've asked for. Those appeals were both forwarded by MEMA to FEMA, and FEMA now will be reviewing those. This is a big deal for the city. This is $8.8 million that we've already spent that we're going to have to make up if FEMA doesn't change its mind. Our Senate representatives, our two senators and our representative of both their staffs are working this. So we've got lots of heavy hitters helping us out on this. I think we're in good shape, but you just never know. Big deal for the city, these two appeals.
Okay.
That concludes the mayor's report.
Any departmental reports? If not, we'll move on to council reports. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, I had a couple things. I found all my stuff and had it all
How is it?
It's a nice day in Biloxi.
For Christmas, I'm getting you a binder.
Well, a couple things I wanted to tell Jerry Credo. I talked to Lou Atkins about his property. He said he was going to cut it. He might have cut it today. I'm not sure. That's the property on Bayview. Okay, so I just want to let you know about that. And Walt told me, Mike Leonard, that is Jimmy Lane's pipes in that Pond Street. So he told me to go through Craig Ralston and tell him what to do. So, but it is Jimmy Lane. We was right. We just wasn't for sure. So I just want to let you know about that too, you know. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Deming? Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, just a reminder, I have a ward meeting Monday, September 9th. That's Monday of next week at 6 o'clock at the Snyder Center. It's open to the public. I'd also like to thank our fire department. I understand we have 3 firefighters in Florida. Just present until the storm does something. And it's part of a comprehensive effort. I think the state sent over a number of firefighters, and some of those I'm sure are certified emergency medical technicians. So please keep them and the people on the East Coast in your thoughts and prayers. I noticed that the docket, I'm sure through an oversight, was not attached to the routine agenda. Just so it'd be great, I know we vote on it later in the meeting, it'd be great if somebody could print something somewhere. I'd vote for it if I could look at it to see what we're paying.
Katie's making copies now.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Leonard, if you don't mind, I see we have a copy of the capital projects list here at our seat. Could you send me a PDF copy of that or a spreadsheet?
Will do.
Just thank you. And the last thing, with MEMA's endorsement, just having sat in on a number of these FEMA meetings and MEMA meetings with Mr. Rhodey, I just know it's been a long haul to get to this point, and I appreciate your efforts. I know that's what we pay you for, but I also see what you have to go through to get us to the point where we are now. So I appreciate your efforts. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Mr. Glavin?
Yes, thank you. I want to recognize Public Works. They've started on the drainage project in Pelican Bayou near the Carana and Benvu homes. The crew is out there working in this heat, from morning to right before I came here, and they were really getting it. Residents really appreciate that. Also, I just want to report that I met with the Coastal Mississippi group today, Milton Segara. We had about a 2-hour meeting and talked to a bunch of his directors about all this negative press that we had and their efforts to try to stem the tide and put together a program to get the right message out there that we're open for business and we're still a great place to come and stay and play on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. There was a contradicting, I guess, statistic. He reported that the beach, what is the percentage of people who utilize the beach or come here because of the beach? And it was an interesting statistic. I don't know if you take a wild guess, but the number, I was off when I took a guess, 4%. 4% come here because of the beach or make their vacation here because of the beach. That's very conflicting, because if that's true, then if all this negative press came out, it seemed like it would only affect 4% of our tourists, and it certainly affected a lot more, but it goes to show you the power of perception. Even though they may not come here because of the beach, words like toxic and algae blooms and flesh-eating bacteria and on certainly has a psychological effect, but hopefully we can overcome it. I will say this, from the hotel standpoint, for this Labor Day weekend, it was very successful. It was concerning because there was a major hurricane out there. It looked monstrous, but all reports, it looks like the hotels all across the Gulf Coast did pretty good this weekend. We had fantastic weather.
That's
and
good to hear.
hopefully those numbers will go tell everybody they had a great time. On that, I know this is MDEQ, but is there any relief in sight that they're going to let us take down the advisories for the water advisories? Anybody heard anything? Nothing as of yet. Okay. I want to also kind of shout out to Biloxi Youth Football. They've started all the practices. First games are this weekend, Director Bell, so I know there's a lot of eager parents. I just got a text from my daughter. My grandson is practicing tonight, and he said she don't know who this kid is, but he's making a bunch of tackles, and I told him I'd take him to Margaritaville if he did good, so he must have had a good incentive tonight. Let's see, what else?
Yeah, have you got the Shuckers on your list, Councilman? If
No.
you don't,
Tell me about 'em. How'd they
if you
do?
don't, the Biloxi Shuckers kick off the start of the 2019 Southern League playoffs with games on September 4th and 5th at MGM Park. So, boy, we really ought to end this season. It'd be a great chance to end the season well.
Be there or be square.
Well, that's
Aye,
terrific.
aye,
I also understand that they broke a record for wins in a season.
81.
And so if you look at their record, Biloxi, you know, that Biloxi Shucker record, they're breaking records and really representing our great city. That's enough for now. That concludes my report.
Okay, Mr. Barrett?
I have no report.
Okay, and I have no report, so we'll move on to the public agenda with citizen comments. We have 45 minutes allotted. Each citizen gets 3 minutes apiece to speak.
Yeah, report, Phil.
Once you reach the desk, will you please state your name aloud for the record, as well as write your name and address on the form there? Anyone on my left, your right, that would like to come speak? Would you like?
Hello, everybody. My name's Joe Agregard. I'm coming here before you, hopefully for the last time. I feel like I'm under arrest or something. I'm in court. My wife and I, we're really pulling for a zoning change. It would give us opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise. All of our neighbors are on board with it. They're all good with it. We're just waiting on y'all. We're hoping for a favorable outcome, and that's pretty much all we have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come speak? Anyone on my right, your left, that would like to come speak? If not, citizen comments are now closed. We'll move on to the policy agenda. Ms. Lucy, will you please read Ordinance A?
Ordinance to amend Section 9122 pertaining to garbage collection fees.
Do I have a motion?
And what is it?
Huh?
What are we doing now?
On A.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Glavin, second by Mr. Tisdale. This being a first reading, we'll move on to Ordinance B.
Ordinance to authorize a change in zoning for property identified as 5155 Road 536.
It's previously moved by Mr. Glavin and seconded by Mr. Guines. Do we have any discussion, Mr. Glavin?
Yeah, I do, and I appreciate Mr. Agregard, his wife, coming tonight. We also saw him at our last meeting. He's certainly very passionate about developing his property, has some great ideas. He shared some of them last week, and I think we really need to support him. One thing that the Planning Commission did, they kind of reduced it to conditional use, and I understand that Mr. Agregard asked for regional business for a variety of reasons. A lot of the property in and around it is regional business, correct, Director? And including an RV park, your mama's house, not your mama's house, Doc, but your mama's house, the very well-known River Bar and Grill. But Mr. Agregard has expressed that he wants to do short-term rentals. He also is interested in developing boat rentals, overnight boat rentals as well. And it certainly seems to fit that little neighborhood and area where it's situated. I'd like to have a little bit more discussion with the director, because I'm kind of leaning toward maybe we kind of amend this to make it regional business, but I'd like to hear from the director and possibly Mr. Agregard as well.
In planning philosophy, and actually in our LDO, what it says is that you are, when you're asking for a zoning change, you try to get the least zoning intensity that actually subscribes to what it is you're asking for a use. What happened with the at the Planning Commission is that, and I've got an overhead here I can show you that would make it a little clearer. Keith, if you'll turn that on for me.
Bless you.
All right, thank you.
Same here.
Thank you.
Same here from the city.
Thank you.
I think it'd probably be better if I show you the map with a color on it. You can see it, okay. This is, where your mama's house is located, up at the top of this peninsula here, next to Cedar Lake Road. Okay, all of this property through here is zoned RB. This is the property in question, this piece and this piece, and it's on a road called Road 536. It comes back in here to several residential properties. What he's asking for, Mr. Agregard, is asking to change this piece of property and this piece of property to RB. That's what the original application was for. When it got to the Planning Commission, they felt that having RB right next to single-family residentially zoned property was just too big a step between the two. The RB would open the door to open a bar, open some other things that might not work well right next to the residential property that's there. So the Planning Commission and the council always have the authority to reduce the scope of the zoning change request or the intensity of whatever request it is. So NB zoning would allow what he's asking for with a conditional use. The Planning Commission voted to reduce the request from RB zoning, regional business, to NB zoning. Mr. Agregard would have to come back for a conditional use. Now, in the Planning Commission meeting, he also said that what he'd like to do on the property is to have the marina. Well, a marina is allowed as a conditional use in NB zoning. So since he's going to have to come back anyway for the short-term rental, which is what he's wanting to do in this house that's located here. There's an existing house, and he wants to do short-term rental there. He'll have to ask for conditional use, but he could also ask for the conditional use on the marina as well. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Mr. Creel, across the street, is that where the RV park is?
It is,
Where
yes,
it's
sir.
regional business there as well?
It is on the other side, yes, sir.
Okay, and we did not make that conditional use, we just zoned it regional business, correct?
Regional business, yeah.
Okay.
One of the issues about this is that we talk about transitional zoning, going from a very intense zoning, stair-stepping down to a lower zoning, and the NB zoning would actually create that impression. It would go from RB, which is the most intense, stair-step down to the NB, and then stair-step down to the residential. And that was the thinking with the Planning Commission.
I just have a couple more questions. So Mr. Agregard paid a $175 fee before he went to or something to that effect, before he went to the Planning Commission?
Yes, sir, that's the application.
And so if he goes back for conditional use and for what he wants to do, he has to pay another $175 fee?
Yes. And let me just explain. What that pays for is we have to advertise in the newspaper and some other things. We're not really making any money off that. It's a trade-off for having to advertise. So.
But we could save him and us some money if we just zone this to neighborhood business, and he can go on and develop like he wants to, and we don't have to incur all these extra fees.
Well, if we do it to the neighborhood business, then he would have to come back for the conditional use.
Okay.
If you do
If we did regional,
if you
he
do the
would not.
regional business, then he would not have to come back.
Correct.
Yeah. So.
Correct. Okay. And if anybody else has any questions?
A couple.
Mr. Guines, hold on. Mr. Guines seconded. You have anything?
Yeah, how do you feel about, do you feel it's best to stair step it? Were there any residents that come out against it?
There were residents that came out to speak. They were not opposed to it. I don't think they really understood, the differences in the zoning. They actually stated that they live in houses there and that they enjoy the music that comes from your mama's house there, on the weekend nights. My personal opinion is, or as a director, I would have to say that my recommendation would be to go with the NB, but I certainly don't want to go against the
Gotcha.
councilman over that area. But from a planning standpoint, the transitional zoning is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and I know he had someone that spoke in favor of him doing it. But at the planning commission meeting, were there any of the other neighbors, because he's adjacent to a neighborhood? And of course, I understand the reasoning behind it, stair-stepping it down where he can at least operate and do the things that he wanted to do. But of course, if he go into the RB label, then he can just open up a bar and without any regards to answering
As
to
a use by
anyone.
right, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's all.
Go ahead.
George
Oh,
has a
George.
question. I'll go after George.
Such a
That was
gentleman.
my question. What he asked for, what is he actually losing? If you do it, like you said, the correct way we're supposed to do it, as far as the planning commission, step it down, what is he losing that he wants?
Well, I think at the when he asked that question at the planning commission, we didn't give him a clear answer about the marina part. Now, the planning commission is on board. They understand that he's going to be coming back for short-term rental, and I didn't get the sense that anyone on the planning commission was opposed to the short-term rental. The question came up during his request. He said, well, I'd also like to do a marina there. And at the time, we said, well, we think you'd have to go to the RB to do that. But after looking at the chart, no, a marina is allowed as a conditional use in NB.
Oh, real quick, can he do both of them under that one permit?
Under the one fee?
Marina and short-term rental?
Under the one fee?
Yes.
Yes, he could, when this goes back to the planning commission for conditional use, he would pay one fee, and we would just advertise everything in that one ad.
And that would give him everything he asked for?
Yes.
That don't give him the marina.
Yes, sir. He could ask for both in the same hearing. He
And you could
ask
have
for
short-term rentals in a
the
marina.
short-term rental and the marina in the same
We have
hearing.
short-term rentals in our harbors. I mean, you gonna start short-term, you talking about boats?
No. The short-term rental would be in the house. The marina, he wants to do boat rentals, in that area, so that, and so he could do
I mean,
both of those.
I
But
think you had to
no,
make sure that's clear to them.
yeah, no short-term rental in the boats, no. And I don't think that was his intent. I didn't get that from his
Because we don't
question.
want all these marinas to turn into trailer parks.
No.
Because everybody and their brother be renting a boat to anybody. And that's the problem we had in the harbor, the home, when the people was living on them.
Yeah, our ordinance specifically says that that's prohibited.
But you don't feel like what we're doing the right thing as far as the planning commission, the steps you've taken.
The transitional zoning, from a planning standpoint, is the right way to do it.
And doing it that way, that's what I'm saying, what really effects does that have on him? What he wants that he can't get now?
It will give him, it'll open the door for him to get the short-term rental. It'll open the door for him to get the marina as a conditional use. One of the good things about conditional use is that if there happens to be a problem later down the road with it, then the planning commission or the city council has the right to question the conditional use permit again. You're making too much noise out there, or we're getting complaints that, these boats are too loud, whatever it happens to be, then with a conditional use, you have some oversight over that.
That's the idea of protecting the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
All right. Fair enough.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, a couple of things. I attended that planning commission, and as I recall, the proceedings were audioly recorded. There was not a stenographer there. And maybe I missed it, and I might have. I don't recall anything or any discussion or much discussion about a marina. I don't say, and if it was, I missed it. What I recall was Mr. Agregard saying that because there was some discussion about the zoning, and that you could always, I guess, reduce the zoning, but you couldn't expand the zoning.
That's correct.
On the commission. And Mr. Agregard, I think, really preferred that it be regional business at the time, but under the circumstances with the planning commission and the discussion, they thought that neighborhood business would be better. Okay. I know that I think he was asked, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Agregard, I believe he was asked at the time, well, what is it you want to do with the property? He said something about a bed and breakfast, and, well, bed and breakfast, the owner has to be there on the property. He did mention short-term rentals, and I think there was some discussion perhaps about, maybe it was in the paperwork, that would like to have short-term rentals on boats, and that set off a bell in my head because that's prohibited by ordinance. But as I recall, there was some discussion about the adjacent properties and the fact that there was a residential neighborhood behind that, and the transitional zoning pretty much is a textbook procedure. That's kind of one of the basics, and I know that we have discussions about that. But I'd like to ask Mr. Agregard a question right here, and I think Mr. Lawrence kind of hit the nail on the head. He asked it a little different way. Say what? Yeah, we can do that if you like. Mr. Deming, I think some other folks have some questions of you, Mr. Creel, and then I'll ask Mr. Agregard some questions.
Okay.
You got a question?
It's your turn.
Tag. Mr. Creel, you mentioned that some of the residents came out and they didn't oppose it. And I know you interjected your own thought that maybe they didn't understand what's going on, and I'd hate to assume that people don't know what they're doing when they do something just to achieve an outcome that we'd want to achieve. I'm not saying that you did that, and you may very well believe that they didn't. However, if they said that they were okay with it, I would take them at their word. One question I have is, when you talk about the stair-stepping technique or the transitional zoning, when we change the RV park or whatever it is to RV to RB, there was no transition. Like that wasn't important at that point. It went directly from RB to RER, and at that point you didn't tell them it should be neighborhood business because we need transitional zoning. So I think if we use that same logic, then why isn't it appropriate to use that same logic now?
Well, on the other side of the road, when that case came to us, there were no neighbors over there.
I'm sorry, there were what?
There were no neighbors over there on that side at all. Their property will abut the school down there. And of course, he had to get to the RB zoning in order to do a RV park on that side. And of course, that's directly across the street from Yo Mama's house. So you had similar uses up there. Excuse me. As you come further south, not just there, like I say, there are a couple of houses down Road 536, but as you come further south on Cedar Lake Road, there are many houses that line Cedar Lake Road down here. And again, here is where the house is that they're proposing to put in. So if you did open the door for, let's say, a bar with zoning to let a bar go in there, it's going to affect all of these other people that live on Cedar Lake Road south of here.
Refresh me, where is your mama's house at?
Your mama's house is up here on this end, and the house that we're talking about is down here. And the two lots that are being rezoned or consideration is this one and this one.
And then where are the other lots that you're talking about, the other residents?
Along Cedar Lake Road that come down further. They're not on this map.
Okay, so there's nothing adjacent to the east of these properties?
The houses, the residentially zoned property and the houses
I'm
that are
asking
there.
you to show me on that
This
map.
direction. This is Road 536.
Right. I'm
And-
asking you, where are the residents right there? Are there houses, structures that are occupied by people?
Yes. Mhm.
Where at?
They're down this road. You can see a driveway that goes off here. I guess we should have done a better map that included all of this, but there's a house right up in here, and then there's another one further down.
So just those two?
There might have been one more, but there were, as I remember, there were only two people that showed up at
It was Mr. Jumaville, and the residents that were here at our last meeting spoke in favor of Mr. Agregard's efforts. And I believe there is a house next to the RV park as you travel up Cedar Lake. I believe there's at least one house, and then you go into, there's another neighborhood by the church and everything in school.
Okay.
Anyway.
That's all, the only questions I have for Mr. Creel.
Anyone else? Mr. Glavin?
I don't have any questions for Mr. Creel. I'd like to call Mr. Egregard up. I think we all have a few questions and would like to hear from him.
Absolutely. Now, if you look at this map, this property right here, that's regional business. I've lived in my home for 30 years. They've never bothered me. I have neighbors. I've been there for 30 years. I'm not putting up a bar today, tomorrow, or ever. Just saying that I will. That really upsets me. Now, as far as this property across the street, that's right next to the biggest church you've ever seen. Very big church in school. I'm sure they weren't asked about this either, you know? Now, if you come down here, right across right here, all this, it comes straight across from my place. There's a piece of property right here. It's also RB. They don't bother me either. Why is it everybody has to have a buffer zone except for me? I don't have a buffer zone. There's no buffer zone between me and these regional business zone properties. I can't understand why I'm being fought on this so hard. I'm not putting up anything that's going to bother anyone.
Mr. Egregard, couple questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Kenny, you had the thing. I just
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I tend to agree with you. When you look at the picture, you see the two peninsulas down there. One is your peninsula, the other is RB already. So if the fear was a bar could come in, well, wouldn't that be a threat to the neighborhood as well?
Absolutely, it would.
So,
That's
so
why I'm not
I
doing
see the same way as yourself. With regard to your neighbors, the ones that are actually adjacent to the properties, were they the ones that came out and spoke in favor
Yes.
of this, in favor of being RB?
Yes.
I don't
And
have any.
they fully understand. Had I enlightened them that this meeting would be here tonight, I guarantee you they would have been up here. Because first of all, Mr. Harry Lammy, he can't wait to speak. I didn't think it would be necessary. I thought this was kind of a foregone conclusion. But with all of the pushback I'm having tonight, I'm pretty surprised. Like I said, I'm not putting up a bar today, tomorrow, any day. I have neighbors. I've had them for years. I like them. They like me. I want to keep it that way. If I'm doing anything to bother my neighbors, I want to be the first to know.
And we appreciate people like you in our city. I have no further questions for you, but others on the council may.
I have a question. How far are you from that church?
I am, I guess about a third of a mile, maybe 300 yards.
300 yards? So that means that if you did put up a bar, you would have to deal with the church.
I wouldn't now or ever. My family actually used to own the property where your mama's house is. It was a fish camp. It was Little Joe's Fish Camp. It was ours. We built it in the late 1980s. We've never bothered anyone. And as Mr. Harry said, he's right there. He enjoys it. But if he had a problem, he could go to the present owner, and she would certainly do something about it.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is, in case something did happen, is protect the residents or the people around. If the property would end up not being yours, that we would protect it. Well, I mean, just in case. You never know. But
I've been here 30 years. I'm not going anywhere.
yeah, but knowing that we got the church there, knowing that we got the church there, and that they would have to have consent for you to actually put a bar there, gives us
Has no problems there.
absolutely. All right.
No problems there. If
All
they
right.
did, they could. I certainly wouldn't do it.
Thank you. I'm done.
Yes,
Oh, go ahead,
a
Mr.
couple of
Rizzo.
questions. Where the pen is right now, that bottom portion of property, that's one of the two pieces of property. that we're speaking of? And that's where the home was or your residence is?
No.
I think, or where you used to live, or?
No, my residence is right about here.
Right. And you wanted to
This
make,
property right here belongs to Jeremiah Newman.
okay. On your property, well, let's call them the top portion and the bottom, the top property and the bottom property. The bottom property is where you reside
Yes.
now, and you mentioned bed and breakfast,
Yes.
but then later, short-term
Well,
rental. I think that's what you're looking at, is short-term
Everything-
rental, correct?
Exactly.
Okay,
Everything pretty much today, they just call it,
okay.
B&B, but, it's really short-term rental.
All right, so the short-range goal would be you want to run a short-term rental at that address.
Yes.
There may be a long-term goal, and I think this is kind of what Mr. Lawrence may have been trying to get at a little earlier. If all that's required for a short-term rental is a neighborhood business, why would you need a regional business? Do you have long-term plans for that property?
Why is everyone fighting me on it?
Well, I don't think anybody's
As I
fighting.
said, the regional business in front of me, right directly in front of me,
Right.
right here, 30 years, they've never bothered me. I'm not going to bother them.
I don't think anybody's pushing back so much as we are inquisitive, because we've never had somebody come forward saying, hey, I want a higher commercial designation, what the Planning Commission has recommended. So it's unusual from that respect. And that's why I asked my question. If you're looking to do a short-term rental and that's all you're looking to do there, then neighborhood business designation would do exactly what you want to do, but you may have other plans for that property. I don't know.
I may have plans that I don't even know about.
Right.
With the regional business, it will give me the opportunity to do things I haven't even thought of. But not that I'm going to put up a bar or ever. I'm not going to do anything to upset my neighbors or disturb them in any way.
What about the top property where the pin point is now? Or I don't think that was mentioned during the course of the Planning Commission hearing, so you don't have any plans for that property at this
No,
time. It's just if you're going to get them rezoned, you may
Yes, sir.
want to consolidate the property at some point or not, or whatever.
Yes,
Keep
sir.
your options open. Mr. Creel.
Well, I want to ask Mr. Creel
Jerry,
a
go
question
ahead.
about the bar. If you rezone this to what he wants, he has the right to have a bar. Right, under conditional use. So what Felix was asking, if he sold the property, then somebody could actually put a bar there.
It makes
I mean, that's one of your concerns.
Mike Leonard may know that.
if we give it the better designation.
But they had the right to do it.
They would have to do the same.
No, not you. That's what I'm just trying to find out. See, that's what you gotta watch when you start changing all these zones. Because we live with this all the time. When you change a lot of zones, you open up to something else that people don't look at. But if I sold a piece of property, then the guy come behind me, yeah, I can have a pawn shop there. I could have this here because it come under the conditional use, different zoning. And that's the question they're trying to ask for you. Yeah, you probably won't open the bar, But if you want to sell a property, next guy might open up another, what is it, Phillies out of there, Texas. But I mean, that's how we got to look at things.
Mr. Egregard, really appreciate you coming again and wanting to develop your property. I feel like I can support it just because of the preponderance of regional business all around you. You've made that point. Your neighbors have come here and said that they don't oppose it. They even submitted a letter that you read into the record last time. So, Mrs. President, I'd like to propose an amendment to make this regional business instead of neighborhood business.
I'll second that.
Okay?
Okay, motion to amend by Mr. Glavin for regional business and seconded by Mr. Deming, but I believe we have more questions, correct?
Okay.
For Mr. Creel?
I have more questions for Mr. Creel, if I might ask those before we vote on this amendment.
Let me make something clear that nobody here is trying to oppose the short-term rental or the marina. And if my speaking sounded like that. That was not the intent. What we're trying to do is to get him to the least zoning necessary to give him what he wants. So that was the reason that I believe the Planning Commission recommended the NB. That would be the least intrusive.
Thank you, Mr. Creel. I certainly didn't take it that way. I would ask, what's the difference, if you could give us some examples in terms of what's permitted in regional business and then what's permitted in neighborhood business?
Well, regional business is the most intensive business zoning that we have short of waterfront. It opens the door for regulated uses like pawn shops and adult, well, no, I take that back, not adult uses. We changed all that before. But any of the regulated uses like cash for titles, those kind of things, all of that falls under RB. It's more intensive than CB, which is our entertainment zoning.
What about convenience stores or things like that?
Well,
Neighborhood.
Convenience stores are allowed in NB zoning too, but there's a limitation on there. You know, you can't do gas sales in the NB zoning, and one of the reasons for that is to try to keep traffic out of the area of the residentially zoned neighborhoods. But don't make any mistake, RB zoning is very intense.
And again, my concern is, and the reason I ask the questions, if I want to do if I want to open a short-term rental, that's my intent right now. That's all I'm trying to do. Then the neighborhood business will allow you to do that, and if at some other point you want to do something else of a higher degree, if you will, of commercial business there, there's no reason you couldn't come back and make the same request to the Planning Commission. That'd be 107. Well, understand, I want to go back to what Mr. Lawrence has said, because he served a couple of terms more on the council than we have. But what we've also learned, and please don't take this personally, it's just an observation. It's tough not to, but trust me, this is not personal. If somebody comes up, no pun intended, and offers you a boatload of money for one or both of those properties, it may be tough for you to say no. And then Mr. Lawrence, after buying that property, opens George's Place. That's not what your neighbor signed up for. And although I believe you when you say that's not my intent, we've seen, I guess, requests come and go, and it causes a lot of concern just for the residents in that area. It's not my ward. Right, they can do that, but then on the other side of you to the east is the residential. If it was RB over there, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. If it was regional business on the east side, or maybe even neighborhood business on the east side, but the fact that it's residential. So anyway, I just have concerns about that. I'm not questioning your integrity. It's just that I've seen a number of instances where everybody goes in with a good intent. This is what I plan to do. Circumstances change in our lives and things happen, although nobody plans them, but as life unfolds, sometimes we have these challenges. So thank you, Mr. Creel. I'm done. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Creel.
Okay.
So let's just hypothetically say that we do amend this for regional business today, and hypothetically he sold his property for a boatload of money to someone else. If they decided they wanted to open a bar on that property, they would still have to come to us for conditional use.
No.
They would not.
No, not if you go to RB. It would be a use by right.
Okay, and they'd just have to go basically pull.
They'd come in and get go through DRC and get a license.
Okay, and then looking at that map again, between the church and him, that property is already zoned RB, is that correct? That piece? Yeah,
on
the
this
church,
side?
Yeah, point to where where Cedar Lake.
The Cedar Lake Church is over on this side.
Okay, and then And then just south of there, across the road, is already zoned RB?
There's a strip of that that has some RB there, yes, sir.
Okay, and then if you go just north of the water there,
Just here?
yeah, is that RB?
This is RB right here, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. No more questions.
Any other questions?
So just this, I guess, a plea to the council in support of Mr. Glavin's amendments. Nathan hit it on the head. I mean, all of that next to the church is already RB. Anyone could put up whatever they thought that would interfere with the quiet enjoyment of the church or those neighbors in those locations already. The transitional concept wasn't important at that point when it was rezoned to RB. The property that's next to, can you show me the actual area where the RV park is?
It's this right here, these two lots right here.
So that peninsula area that's next to his property, nope, over, down, yes, that area.
Mhm.
Why was that changed to RB and not neighborhood, so that would transition into his property? See, my concern is that it wasn't an issue at that point when we converted it at that time, and now it is, even though the neighbors aren't opposed to it. What happens down the road if someone buys it, and what happens down the road if someone moves in, they know what they're getting into when they do this. The current residents don't have a problem with this, and I would be inclined to give Mr. Agregard the same deference that we gave the other RB zones when we changed the other RB zones. It doesn't make sense, and I get the fact that nobody opposes it. So this is the irony that we face with future opportunities. We say, one, that he says he's not going to open up a bar now, but he could. And on the other hand, he's looking at us say, well, we don't oppose you bringing in a marina or short-term rental in the future, but we could. So, you know, it's which side of the coin do we want to give value to? And I think that we should give value to the person that's in the room that wants to bring value to our city. Give him the same respect that we gave the other property owners when we changed those zones. That's just my position. That's my plea to the council.
I have a,
Well said.
go ahead, Mr. Lawrence, I'll follow you.
The question I'm going to ask, how long has that been regional?
Regional business?
Right, the other one.
I don't know how long, but, you know, you had a use already there. You already had your mama's house there. So the zoning is compliant with the use that was on there.
So I mean, it might have been there forever. So
It's
it
been there
hasn't changed
it's been there as
anything.
long as I've been here, you know,
So it's just always been
under a different
regional
name. Yes,
zoning.
sir.
Can he have a fuel dock inside that ordinance, that regional?
Can he have a fuel dock in there? Yes, he can.
So you can sell gas and that?
Yeah, it would have to, he'd have to do some things because of the flood zone there, but yes, he could have a fuel dock.
What's the distance from a church that you can actually have a bar? How far do you have to be?
I think it's
Should be.
1,500 feet.
Yeah,
1,500 feet?
Mm-hmm.
With that, what's the distance from his parcel, from the church's parcel to his parcel?
I don't know the answer to that question. You know, the church and the school are at the south end of that property. This is the north end of the property here where you've got this yellow, and the rest of it is down at the south end, so.
So if I might, let me, at the risk of being absurd, which I don't mean to be, but let me push the needle to the other side of the gauge and say, why not ask for waterfront zoning, never have to come back at all for anything?
He could do that. Now, because there's no waterfront zoning there, it would probably be looked at as spot zoning.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Small.
And whenever somebody comes in to request a zone change, is that the standard fee, $175?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Call for the question on the amendment.
All right, all in favor of the amendment? 6-1, Tisdale against?
Yeah.
Moving on, resolution C.
We vote on the
You gotta vote
Ah.
on
uh,
Now
ordinance
we're
as
gonna vote on
amended.
it as amended. All in favor? Unanimous vote. Resolution C.
Congratulations, Mr. Agregard. Do well.
I could be able to drink some beer.
say it right.
Resolution affixing the tax levy for the year 2019 through 2020.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale, second by Mr. Barrett. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, I just want to note at the bottom of the first page of the resolution itself, it says taxable for calendar year. Yeah, 2000, I think it says 2018. I think that should read 2019. It's the line right below the ad valorem tax levy of 73.47 mils. Calendar year, shouldn't that read 2019? Is that it? No, could that be considered a Scrivener's error? Robert, could that be considered a Scrivener's error?
Yes.
Yeah, Lucy, can we do that?
Anybody?
Can we declare the Scrivener's error? It should read 2019.
Well, then the next line should be fiscal year 2019, 2020.
Correct.
And on the next page, that January 2018 should be,
Exactly.
okay.
So I would, whatever I've got to do, just to note that it's a Scrivener's error, that it'll be corrected so that it
I
reflects
think it was
the
a
correct
copy
fiscal
and paste error, but.
It
that's all right.
was an ID 10T error, maybe. No. That's all, thank you.
Anyone else?
I
Mr.
had a
Barrett?
couple of questions to ask Mike. I still got some of these cleared up. We had the $19 million in 2019, and all of a sudden we dipped, is $11 million. I'm trying to figure out where you explained that to me on my little note.
Councilman, I think you're one step ahead of you. We haven't gotten to the budget yet.
No, I thought that's what we was doing.
No.
That's the next one.
Oh, okay.
But I'm ready
About the
for you.
levies?
I'm ready for you when we get there.
Good.
Mr. Barrett, you have any discussion?
On the ones on the levy, they all the same?
No change.
No changes, right?
Correct, no change.
That's
Not
what
even
it
to the
is.
school taxes?
No change to school levy. In Biloxi, not in Harrison County.
Say that again?
My read of the newspaper over the weekend, Harrison County just proposed an increase in their tax levy for the schools. Not so with Biloxi schools.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous vote with Glavin. Oh, sorry. 5-1 with Glavin out of the room. Dimming. Moving on to Resolution D.
Resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2019-20 municipal budget.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Glavin, second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion, Mr. Glavin?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
Mr. Guines?
It's been enough.
Yeah, just wanted to explore some other possibilities also in cutting into the budget, and we may be offering an amendment soon.
Soon.
That's, yeah. So that's all I have to say for now.
For what?
At a later date?
Later date, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yes, I just have a comment. I can't support this budget because we're about 4 million with expenditures over revenue, and last year we did a good job of not spending everything that we planned to be expended, and in fact made, I think, $1.5 million, which is always a good thing. But I just, if we're not going to plan to spend that much money, then I'd like to know what it is we're not going to be completing, or what items we may plan to spend that we plan to spend for that we don't spend. And I know this is really not the time to ask this question. I think I'd asked or made this point during the budget workshops, but that's my position. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was like Paul.
Batter up,
Yeah, are you ready?
batter up.
Good, there you go. Let's throw no curveballs there now, you know? That's always my concern. When I kept talking to you and Popo, was $4 million different. No matter what you say, no matter if you have the money to pay for it, you're still passing a deficit budget because you're $4 million out. That's one thing. Now, I need to have these things explained. This $11 million, what happened to it from one year to the next? Went from 19 million to 8 million. These are the sheets that y'all gave us last week.
That would be the
Last two.
combined fund statement.
Yeah. Right,
Is the title of that the combined fund statement? That's one of the four we gave you.
yeah. Well, those are some of the questions I had. That's just the 800,000 in the bond. I mean, the port money, I'd like to know where all that came from. But I mean, when you go from that much different, and you got 6,400, and you got down here, others, whatever this is, that's a lot of money sitting, 6,400,000. I mean, I'd like to know what that line represent. That's a ton of money we're dealing with.
I don't know. Are we in the combined fund statement or the revenue statement?
Yeah, this is the revenue part at the top,
Revenue part at the top. of the
and all that
combined
says
fund
is
statement.
others.
Talking about $800,000 other revenue. That's the number, $868,897 in other revenue for the port. That sounds to me like, but that's the number right there. Think
I have no idea, that's what I was thinking.
think about where the
He's holding, I guess.
revenue comes from. Revenue comes from two sources. Revenue for the port comes from two sources, basically.
Say again?
Those two sources are the day-to-day rents that we charge for vessels in the harbor, and also comes from the rent that we get from the Golden Nugget. Those are the two sources, one of which is $512,000, the other one was $891,000. That's the two sources of revenue in the Port Enterprise Fund.
That created 800,000.
Those two combined are $800,000. Wait, Ken, look at this. $512,800 is the county money. That's the county money paid for the bond. $891,000 is the boat slip rental. Right. So the
So the 400-something thousand is part of the 2 million we're getting from the county.
So if you look at column 17 under the combined fund statement, there are three sources of revenue that we have in our Port Enterprise Fund. I said two a minute ago, I left out one. $512,000 is the money that the county pays pay for our port bond. $891,000 is the Golden Nugget rent, and $868,000 is the charges for services. So those are the three elements of revenue that comes into our port. Money we get from the Golden Nugget, charges for rents through the year,
It'll go to
and
another
the county
2.7
millage
million
that
a
pays for
year.
our port bond.
Now, there's a separate berth slip rental. It's a little over it's $750,000 a year, the berth slip rental.
Say it again now?
The berth slip has its own separate rent component to the port. $750,000 a year for the berth slip that the Port Commission had before. And the city took that in. That money, though, goes directly to the port.
Yeah, but I mean, that's nothing to do with the Port Commission. We're the city now. All of it goes to us, right?
But it doesn't have anything to do with the 2.7 million either. I just wanted to clarify that. It's a separate rent fund.
And the extra $1.5 million that y'all created from the county, which is a good thing y'all did, how come that's not reflected into the port? Because that money is supposed to go to the port.
That's a good question, one that I asked to Ken earlier today. We don't recognize the port millage, the additional millage, until it comes in, and when it comes in, we immediately move it into a capital project. So it's not shown as a revenue source. It's about $1.5 million. It's not shown as revenue in
Yes.
this budget because we don't have it yet, but when we receive it, we move it right into a capital project.
Well, why are you putting in capital project? It should go to the port fund.
It goes to the port.
It's dedicated to the port.
The intent of the city and the county was not to spend the port millage on day-to-day operations, meaning, paying for additional harbor masters and so forth and so on. It was intended for things to improve the port, capital projects that would improve the port. And that's what we've done with each increment of money that we've gotten from them. We've moved it into upgrading electrical repairs, upgrading piers. Each
and that's what we need to
increment is
do.
going into capital projects too. And so we're not throwing it away on day-to-day stuff. We're expected to run our harbor day-to-day based on our income from that harbor, not from the county money. County money, it was intended for us to make improvements to the harbor. So what Ken is saying is that when we receive money, and we immediately move it into capital projects. So it's not shown as a revenue source in this particular budget. I guess we could, but
The reason I didn't is because I would have just shown the revenue side of it, and it would have inflated the revenues of the port fund because we haven't appropriated what it's going to be used for. We haven't even came up with the project yet. So we could have, had we had a project that we wanted to just stick in the budget and appropriate, then we could have shown that whole.
Well, so I think that should be in the port, and definitely anything you do,
So-
we need to approve that.
it's all about a two-sided entry, accounting entry.
Yeah,
If
but
we
I'm just
wanted
saying-
to, we could say, we're going to spend all the county millage on the Sherman Canaan Port Harbor Pier or something. We can make up a project and say that's where it's going to, but we didn't do that.
Well, let me tell you something, Mike. You're getting $1.5 million every year. We better be able to control the money, and you better spend it properly. And that's the purpose of the money.
Well-
I don't care, but it's supposed to be spent on port. Nothing but any kind of goofy roads, nothing to do with boardwalks. This is money dedicated to the harbors and the port.
Right.
Period.
And absolutely, we've done that. We've tracked every
You
single
have.
dollar that's come in, every bit of it's come in, and we've stuck it in a project, and every one of those projects came to this council for approval.
That's right. Every $3, y'all get a budget amendment to appropriate those funds that we get from the county. $375,000.
There. You get that 4 times.
You're right, but we're doing that. That's what we're doing. That's why we're not showing you that as throwaway revenue that we just throw in there to make it fluff up the port.
You know, 'cause that's our job up here, to vote on these things, to make sure they're right, and then we handle the money right, and spend it right. That's what we do.
Each project.
All right, now, Ken, can you explain what happened to $11 million?
What, which $11 million you're talking
It was 19,
about? What was 19?
right here.
You're looking at last year's
The sheet you gave us
combined
Tuesday.
funds statement?
Yeah. Well,
Last year's combined fund statement.
it was 19, 8, and now you got 60, all this listed under others, whatever others supposed to be.
Is this
That's a lot of money
year's?
having others, 19 million.
Okay, that's because we're not showing the internal service funds. We're not showing the internal service funds. Okay?
Ken, where's the 19 million on this sheet?
He's talking about this other down here.
Yeah, other, 19 million in the revised budget.
19,855.
Mm-hmm.
So, that figure includes the internal service funds, the self-insurance, the group health, all that. Okay? As you see on the last column of the trust and maintenance, the internal service is not there. Okay? That was 12 million. If it was in there, it would have brought it to around 19, 20.
Well, how come the 12 million not showing on the insurance? Is that what you're talking about, that 12 million? Okay, that should be on there. That's a separate fund by itself. It shouldn't be in this one. You got your income and you got your expenses. That should be a column by itself. It's always been that way.
Actually, those funds, at the end of the year, when they do the audit, they close out the net effect in those funds to the general fund. Okay? So really, we have it there just for our own purposes. It's not a required fund. Okay? We put it there because we want a budget to go through the process with y'all, and we want y'all to know, you know, this is what we received this year in the group health insurance, we're this far behind, or whatever else. Insurance committee needs to do this, but as far as it doesn't have to be in.
Doesn't have to be, but that's the way it should be. I know it made it easy for you, but I mean, that committee on the insurance, we live off the money we need. We self-funded insurance. That's what we do to City of Biloxi. And they're going to run 12 to 12.5 million a year, and you take in almost 12 or so. So we need to have a column saying how well we're doing. You know, let's see others. I mean, that's not the place to put that. That's why we have a committee that does this. You know, I mean, that money should be shown so we could see. I mean, it's hard when you start playing with these kind of numbers. And others, $19 million, and you try, well, it's $12 million for the insurance. Well, the $12 million always set separate, in and out money. You know, just like you do in any accounting. I mean, that's how it's set up.
The expenses are shown in the department budgets.
I just wanted them to know, the rest of the council,
That's
why we don't have it listed like it used to be.
It's duplicate. It's duplicious because those expenses are buried in the department budgets. Mr. Jimmy Schmuckatella, whatever who he is, that's in the Public Works Department, you know, his health insurance costs are shown in the department budget. So putting them out on this column on the far right of your sheet is just repeating what the cost that's already in another budget.
Right.
That's where all the medical costs are all in the.
Every 2 or 3 months, you get on me and Kenny and Paul about we're spending too much money.
We are.
We're spending too much, right.
We are.
That was the reason it was a separate, so we could see where we was at. Not you just call us up one day, said, y'all spent $300,000 too much.
Well, now, it's not someday. Once a quarter, I give you a report. Once a quarter.
But I mean, it was better, we had a separate fund. I mean, it's that same deal, it's just accounting purposes. It makes it.
What I'm saying is, it
right.
would.
I'm not saying you have to do it by law, okay, but it made it a lot easier for us, that's all. So I mean, it just, when you look at dipping 12 million, you know, a couple of years ago, if you remember, y'all didn't take out one of the 12 million. So he was off 12 million. And you had to go back and change it.
So this year we had 7.4 million in self-insurance fund, 7.4 million, which is part of that 11 million. So what did we do this year?
Say again?
What did we do?
Before?
We overspent it.
None of what they did, they counted revenue, didn't count their expenses. One should offset the other one. That's what they did. Mm-hmm. You don't remember that? Yeah. That was a $12 million mistake. Boop.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was because somebody was trying to go ahead and start keying this information, and they used that as a match figure to match up to. It wasn't what should not have been 12 million.
Right.
Councilman, you know this because we've talked about it.
Yes, we have.
And that is that if there was the 500-pound gorilla in our budget, it is the self-insurance medical fund, or the self-insurance medical cost. That's one that we're going to overspend this year, and if we do it again next year, that'll affect that bottom line.
That probably will.
The problem is medical and costs are going up and going up and going up, and we're not putting any more money in the budget.
We'll probably have to do that because that's something that, you know, we couldn't give the employees a raise, so we just kept the insurance pretty much the same to protect them as much as we can. So we're just trying to do that. Yeah, what is going to change, we'll see.
This is a chapter that you'll get to revisit 4 times this next year. Each quarter, we're gonna show you where we are on that medical budget, and we'll talk about whether we need to put more money in or not.
So.
And if we have a shortfall at the end of the year, we'll have to do a budget amendment out of the general.
We got that. And
down you go.
This one here, you got me kidding. I don't understand where you're going with the 25,000 for maintenance from the ball field. And how'd you put that in trust and agency? That has nothing to do with trust and agency.
It goes on the trust fund.
That goes into that capital maintenance fund for the MGM Stadium.
Right.
So it's kind of like a trust fund. That's the way it was set up, okay, as a trust fund. I wasn't here when it was set up, but that's the way it was set up. And so it's not the MGM for the ticket sales and all that other stuff. It's the MGM Stadium repair, capital project fund. They give 25,000, we give 25,000.
Right.
Yeah.
That money's got to be put into a maintenance, it's strictly for maintenance on the stadium.
It does.
Period.
Repair. Yeah,
Repair, whatever.
yeah. We do. We do.
And it's a 50,000, that's 25 and 25.
Yes.
All right, let's see what that one. Then would you explain the 1.2 million that we overpaid or we cashed in a bond? When you got the revenue of 1.2 million,
You're talking about the proceeds?
Down there on,
You're asking about 1.2 million
process,
proceeds of note.
whatever, yeah.
What's, yeah. You want
Gatsby, that's Gatsby. Remember Gatsby?
Yeah.
The mayor loves to talk about Gatsby.
What
Remember
it is?
Gatsby? That's an accounting term.
We
For
have.
a rule where you have to show all your expenditures up front. So we had to show the whole cost of the fire station, the whole cost of the fire trucks, the whole cost of the police vests, camera vests. But in an accounting rule, you also get to show
Well,
revenue in future years.
That's right. We have to show what is going to be due in future years, and that acts as like a revenue currently to fund that total expense. So we will incur those expenses in future years, but right now it's being financed. That 1.2 million. And we'll pay that over the next 4 or 5, whatever the term of the lease is.
So it's not really plus money.
Well, we do that so we can get the total cost of that asset and we can capitalize it for its total cost, not just what we put down, the down payment. You put the total cost in there, then you show proceeds of finance. I agree. Okay? But we will pay that financing back over future years.
Ken, can I interrupt you for a moment? I'm gonna,
Sure.
Mr. Lawrence, I'm gonna move to table this. We just got this in this format, and we've had 6, workshops prior to this. We're gonna talk about this all night, or we can table it. We can table this. I'll move to table it until the 3rd Tuesday of this month. We don't have, only for the county. What is the statute? The state statute says the 15th? I thought the state statute said the 30th.
Come back next Tuesday.
And do a workshop on this on Monday. We'll literally be here all night talking about what we should have talked about before today.
4 workshops.
But it's the format, I think, that we just received that is compelling us to ask questions.
Well, you've heard the questions so far, Councilman, and you heard we had answers for all of them, too.
Well,
It's understanding this very complex spreadsheet. It's about trust, too.
well, we can be sentimental, or we can actually go through this and do it the way we need to be. And I hate to do that, but I'd rather be pragmatic than sentimental. I don't distrust you, but trust but verify. That type of logic is really what I think. We're more prudent on this council than just trust, or at least we hope to be. The perception may be different.
Sit down.
My motion would be to table this and have a special meeting next week.
Just do it next Tuesday, that'd be, want to do it at 1:30?
So this, I thought that the budget had to be adopted by October 1st.
September 15. We have to publish it by October 1st.
Today is the, what, 4th, 3rd, 4th?
Third.
Tuesday's fine.
We could meet next Tuesday at the 10th.
So we're gonna solve it today.
And so we would have to meet and then take action after the workshop?
we could just call a special meeting and address this resolution at that. Not to table it. So my
No, a
motion,
special meeting, you could handle all that at a special meeting.
that'd be my motion to table it pursuant to a special meeting called on the 10th at 1:30 PM.
What's that, next Tuesday?
Yes.
1:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Ooh. I do, I have, I have federal court that day. Yeah, it's only on Tuesdays for these purposes.
We could do Monday.
Yeah.
That would give us, we could even,
I would,
I got
do we
everything
have
set
to
up on
notify
Tuesdays.
anybody? I know, but we
Got
don't
one
have to
day
like
on
do
it,
anything
man.
in papers or.
we could do it Monday
Okay.
or Wednesday, either one of those days I'm okay with, or we could do it in the evening on Tuesday.
Well, we always have a meeting on Tuesdays, so I set everything up to be free on Tuesdays.
Well, no, because we don't have meetings on the second Tuesday, and unfortunately, that's the
I
only day.
said we have meetings on Tuesday, didn't say anything about the second.
So
I
can
said
we do it at
Tuesday, so I make
6
sure all
PM if
my
we did it?
days are open on Tuesday, so I can be here.
So
Nothing to
you're-
do with Monday and Wednesday.
Well, you're available on Tuesday then.
Yeah,
Would
Tuesday,
you,
right.
would you be available Tuesday night at 5 o'clock next week or 6
Right, no
o'clock?
problem there. I'm all day Tuesday, city. Y'all call when you want.
6 o'clock.
Now, Tuesday night, if the Shuckers are still in it, that's a home game. I'm just saying. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm just saying.
Well, if they are, by the time we're done, there might be fireworks going off, so.
Well, you can have it at 5:15, can't you? As long as you have it at the 5, just have it 5:15, like we did the last one. Now we don't have time to go to Shucker game. Doesn't matter to me.
We're not gonna get done with this in 45 minutes. So my motion is to table this pursuant to a special meeting next Tuesday at 6 PM. Is there a second?
I'll be here.
Second by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor of table? Unanimous vote, Glavin,
Where we at?
Resolution adopting the manual for Mississippi municipal courts.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale? Not second? Second by Mr. Guy. Any discussion, Mr. Tisdale?
None at all. I think we're following the manual that every city's municipal court pretty much follows, and this is periodically adopted or updated or whatever, and that's what we're adopting tonight. Is that correct, Mr. Abide?
That's right. Mississippi Judicial College puts this together and they update it. And at the end of this, there are new bench cards for the judges to follow regarding contempt of court, revocation proceedings, release procedures. And this would allow us to be aligned with the rest of the state. And any other rules we have in force prior to that are going to be overridden by this manual that the state is following. So our 3-year period with the ACLU has run its course, and this will allow us to just go into the guidelines of the state.
Any other discussion, Mr. Guines?
None at all.
Any other discussion on the board? All in favor? Unanimous vote. Do I have a motion on the consent?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale, second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion, Mr. Barrett?
No discussion.
Mr. Glavin? Mr. Tisdale?
I do. On item J, this is amending the city budget for this current year for repair, maintenance, and electricity costs at the Maritime and Seafood Industry Museum. And I don't recall that we've done that in the past, so apparently something's different this year, I guess. What's the nature of the repairs and power bill increase?
Elevator repairs and electrical costs. And they're both, we're very tight to the budget, but we need just a little bit more
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Mr. Deming?
I have nothing other than to inform Madam President that I will be in opposition of.
Oh, Deming. Mr. Guines?
None.
Mr. Lawrence? No?
This M, no. M.
M, as in Mary.
F is in Foxtrot.
Say again.
F is in Foxtrot.
Mother.
M is in Mike.
Mary, man,
Mike,
Mike,
Can Mike do
Monster.
the Foxtrot?
I was on here before, that we're supposed to have this, has this been straightened out?
Okay.
Then we rescind this and we come back with another
This is the-
resolution.
Okay, this is a big deal.
Right,
We have a Keesler Gate inside contract. That's from the gate at Forest Avenue into the base. And we have a Keesler Gate outside project, which is from Forest Avenue forward. Each one of them is funded by separate grants. The inside the gate project is nearly complete and has extra funds. The outside the gate project, which we haven't bid yet, is potentially short of money. We can't mix the money, but what we can do, which is very smart, is we can change the scope of work of the inside gate contract to move it further up Forest Avenue, meaning to do the roundabout. So that was the intent of change order 2. Change order 2 was awarded, but inappropriately, we were mixing the grant money. So what we did was, we're canceling or rescinding resolution number 41019, which changes the financing. And we'll give you a new package, talks about a different financing package. But we'll keep the change order alive. We'll still do the project like we planned, but we're gonna give you a new resolution with a different financing source. Same deal, just we're gonna finance it differently.
do you have the finance or you don't have that for this?
Yeah, we've got the money. It's a matter of just not doing it out of not mixing grant monies. That was the mistake in 51019, mix the grant monies. We can't do that. So we're gonna redo that financing package. And that'll be in the next resolution, next council.
And the money will come from,
Money's there. Money will come from the bond, the 19 bond. Small, a very small amount. Most of it is the money left over for Keesler Gate inside.
so we got this straightened out. Is that what you're saying?
You know, this whole capital project business is very complex. It's
Right.
changing every day, and we're constantly moving money to try and fill the gaps. And sometimes we move some money and we think about it and say, you know, that really isn't the right way to do that, so let's do it right.
Right.
Plus, at the time, we did not know the exact amount of residual funds left over in the Keesler Gate inside project. We know that now.
Do we know an amount that we're gonna take out of the 19 bond for this?
Yes. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda? Unanimous vote. Brings us to code enforcement.
With the exception
Oh,
of.
exception of O for Deming, sorry. O is in, oh, Charlie.
The only code enforcement case we have tonight, item A, Reverse Mortgage Solutions, 257 Seal Avenue. This property's still in violation.
Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Reverse Mortgage Solutions at 257 Sill Avenue? If not, this case is closed. Do I have a motion on the routine agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tisdale.
Second.
Second by Mr. Guines. Any discussion, Mr. Lawrence?
Kim, Walt, give us some good news.
Well, this past week, we received 1.72 million from NEMA. There's not currently anything in the pipeline, but we did receive 1.72.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the routine? Unanimous vote. All right, now I need a motion and a second to go into closed session for the purpose of examining the necessity to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Guines. All in favor? 6-1. Now I need a motion and a second that the council conclude the closed session and reconvene as an open meeting. Lawrence Guines. All in favor? 6-1. And now I need a motion and second to go into executive session. Lawrence Guines, 6-1. And we're going in for the purpose of litigation between the Secretary of State and prospective litigation with the Bonnie Care spillway.